Can you believe the Bruce Arians thing? The big news dropping yesterday. Of course, Bruce Arians moving to the front office will no longer be the head coach of the Buccaneers. What do we make of this?
I wonder what happened. I think that Tom Brady decided to come back and decided to say, hey, you're either going to trade me or what you're going to do is you're going to get a new head coach. There had been reports that these two have not been getting along. Their relationship has soured. Of course, they both want to put on social media that they love each other. You're like a father to me. You're like a son to me. Please. No, I don't buy it. You know what I buy are the former players out there who seem to be pretty damn well connected and are saying they did not like each other. So, Tom Brady, the Manchester United match. Remember that? Like a week or two ago? You know who owns Manchester United? Joel Glazer. You know who owns the Bucks? Joel Glazer. Tom Brady going over there, have a little bit of fish and chips, right? Delicious, a little bit of vinegar on that. Says, hey, Joel, listen, it's either me or it's going to be Bruce Arians. And you know who wins football games on Sundays? It's Tom Brady. The Bucks made the right decision here, okay? Maybe they loved each other like 6 days out of the week. But on Sundays, Tom Brady did not love Bruce Arians. And Tom Brady makes the calls.
But I don't really understand. Okay. I mean, we could debate this all day. I just don't really understand that. So he was like, okay, bring in Todd. Let Todd be the head coach now?
Well, what Todd's going to do is...
Is that because Brady's really the head coach? This is just like he's a puppet head.
Coach. What Todd is going to do, and he's a defensive-minded guy anyway, he's going to sit back and stay out of it. And it's going to be Tom Brady and Byron Leftwich just owning the offense, which is pretty much Tom Brady just making the calls.
But isn't that what was already going on? Whatever.
No, because I mean, Arians says that it is Leftwich who was making the calls, who was going to be calling the plays, but there is still some reports about tension because Bruce Arians still had a role in what was happening on offense. And Tom Brady doesn't really like to be told what to do.
Yeah, well, we know that for sure.
I mean, listen, football's not about love. Football's about winning.
Okay.
All right? And now the Bucs actually have a chance, and Tom Brady has a chance here to win his 8th ring.
I hope they crash and burn.
I wonder what Bill Belichick thinks about
Let's talk about hockey now. Let's bring in our NHL panel. We have RotoWire contributors Paul Bruno, AJ Scholes, and NHL.com's Fantasy on Ice host Pete Jensen.
Wow, guys, I don't know what you did, but we're starting the show with hockey here. So whatever it is, producer Drew is very impressed with it.
Last night.
Yeah, last night. Can we talk about last night? So, guys,
we sure can.
First season in the league for the Kraken, and they will not be making the playoffs. No expansion trip here to the finals, a lot like the Golden Knights, who just so happened to kind of shut them out last night. AJ, what did you learn about the Kraken here in their first season, though?
Well, I learned that they didn't get the benefits that Vegas did when they were able to stockpile pieces and make trades. I think the other GMs heading into the expansion draft just felt like they got completely fleeced by Vegas, and they didn't want to let that happen again. So they basically just said, yeah, Seattle takes somebody, whatever, we don't care. And that's why you saw at the trade deadline, that's when they piled up all their draft picks. That's when they traded away the guys that they had. They brought in a ton of draft picks. And all that stuff Vegas was able to do ahead of the expansion draft. Seattle had to wait. And I don't think we really expected them to be that competitive to begin with. I thought the Pacific might have been a little bit more open than it has been. It's been much more top-heavy than I thought it would be at the start of the year. So there was a chance Seattle could do something. But I think, it just proved that they didn't get as good of a start, a more typical start. Vegas got an atypical start on what they were able to do, and Seattle fell into every other expansion franchise's struggles when they first come in.
All right, question here. Logan Thompson with the shutout. He's a rookie. If I'm not mistaken, he just cracked the top 25 fantasy goalie list on NHL.com. Pete! So, Pete, can Thompson help the Knights hold on to the final wildcard spot?
He definitely can, and I think the impending return of Robin Leonard can be an even better news bit for them heading into hopefully the playoffs where everyone expected them to be. Obviously, it's a completely different animal than the Kraken right now because the Kraken got eliminated. They've taken more of a conservative approach to their roster building. They didn't take Vladimir Tarasenko, obviously, which in hindsight looks pretty rough, but of course, they're going to have Matty Beniers coming in from college, from Michigan eventually. So they're still building in the right direction. I think they've just taken a big different approach than Vegas, who has all this star power and so many injuries right now. But at least I think the Golden Knights are trending in the right direction with their little mini winning streak right now. They're going to have to fend off either the Oilers or the Dallas Stars for a playoff spot. But I think the Golden Knights will be okay because they just got Alec Martinez back. Jack Eichel's playing well with Dadonov and Chandler Stevenson. And Alec Martinez just shores up that defense to a point where it's really going to help whichever goaltender it is. It's probably going to be Robin Lehner as the 1A, but Logan Thompson proven that he's not going away anytime soon with that shutout on the night that Lehner comes up and backs him up. So maybe it lit a fire under the kid. He's been impressive over his past 7 or 8 games, Logan Thompson.
Yeah, for sure. Paul, speaking of goalies here, dude, Maple Leafs are struggling to keep goalies on the ice. Mrazek leaving in the first period of the Leafs game on Tuesday. I mean, they are clinging on to that third spot in the Atlantic as that race kind of just goes back and forth here. Can Kallgren keep them afloat? Like, where are you on the emergency backup call list? That's what I want to know. And I believe there's also a Zamboni driver there, right, in Toronto who can just kind of step into the role if needed.
Well, I just checked to see if my daughter still had her goalie equipment here at the home, and she does. I'm available too if I can fit into those clothes. But the serious issue that the Leafs have in the net is something of a short-term thing. Jack Campbell's practicing with the club. I understand he'll be ready probably to suit up for the next game. So that's the good news on the horizon. Shalgren's acquitted himself very well, but the team has solidified their defense with the arrival of Mark Giordano, Ilya Lyubushkin too, and those are factors that bode well for whoever plays in net for the Leaf team. And I think by the time the playoffs roll around, they'll be just fine in the nets.
Okay. All right. You sound nervous. That's all.
All right. Let's move on to a DFS breakdown of tonight's slate. We got 9 games coming our way. Who's your favorite center tonight, Paul?
Well, at the center ice position, I go all the way to the top because I'm guaranteeing that Austin Matthews will get goal number 50 and maybe a few more points in a matchup against Winnipeg. He had them for lunch last year, and the Jets are going to be without Kyle Connor, who is a menace to the Maple Leafs as he is to many other teams in the league, but they're also missing Nate Schmidt on the blue line, and they're going to be throwing a second-string goalie in the nets as well. So it's Shalgren against Comrie tonight is your goaltending matchup, and the teams in front of them, I favor the Leafs heavily. The Jets are on the second of back-to-back games, so that's a pretty attractive invitation to buy into Matthews at 9,300. But if you're skittish about that high price, save some money and go way down the list. You see Nazem Kadri going to play first-line minutes for that Colorado club because Nate McKinnon is out of the lineup. $6,900 his price tag against the San Jose club. They too are on the second of back-to-back, so I like that pick very much. And then finally, Elias Lindholm, the Calgary top-line center. They've been outscoring everybody in the NHL, and he's been a centerpiece to all of that offense. Comes in at only $6,600. Again, a very nice matchup for him against LA.
AJ, which center do you like?
You guys know my favorite thing to do on the show is tell Paul when he's wrong. And it starts with the Nathan McKinnon news. Guess who's playing today? Nathan McKinnon will be in the lineup tonight. That was confirmed by Jared Bednar. And so Nazem Kadri is still a decent play for a value guy on the second line. I think he's still usable, but not quite as valuable when McKinnon's there. And that's who I'm going to go with in this one. $8,700 is the price tag, a little bit cheaper than Matthews. Yeah, sure, he's returning from a one-game absence, but this is a guy that's racked up 10 goals, 12 assists in his last 15 contests. He's nearly unstoppable when healthy. And, oh, by the way, he gets to play at home against the Sharks, who severely disappointed me yesterday. I thought maybe they had a chance to be useful. That was a wrong take. But so if they're not going to be useful on one night, let's bet against them on the second of a back-to-back. Go heavy Colorado, starting with Nathan McKinnon at center.
All right, Pete, where are we going?
I like Dylan Strome. He's a little cheaper, and I think that he has been as valuable as any center in fantasy this month. He has at least a point in 12 of 13 games this month for Chicago. Tough matchup against the Florida Panthers, but hey, the Panthers are giving up a lot of goals lately to teams like Montreal and Ottawa. So why can't they give up 3 or 4 goals regardless of who's starting, Bobrovsky or Spencer Knight? against the Chicago Blackhawks. And Strome, of course, is playing with as good of line mates as you could ask for, Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat. So Dylan Strome, we thought he might get traded before the deadline. He's staying put, and maybe he'll be a part of the Blackhawks rebuild. He's only 25 years old, and he's having a bounce-back season this year.
All right, here we go. Let's go to the wings and things department. AJ, which dude do you want to roster? Looks like the most expensive one. Ooh, Kaprizov facing your Penguins, dude.
That's probably not a bad idea. I mean, to be perfectly honest with how Pittsburgh's been playing lately, and it's been working for me to recommend, Rangers and everybody else against the Pens. So I don't hate that play, but I would rather go with Teuvo Teravainen. I know he hasn't scored much this past month, just 1 goal in 15 March contests, but he still managed 33 shots and 10 assists over that stretch. He's just 5,200, and you get a fantastic matchup going at home against Montreal. It's such a good spot to find him in, and really, he almost comes in with that level of matchup. 5,200 makes him almost a value play than anything else. So I look for him to break out of that goal slump tonight and get one against the Habs.
Okay, Pete, in the words of TV's Jesse Cofield, are you going to make it rain at wing? You're going to spend up? You're going to spend some cash? Be rich?
Spend up for Kirill Kaprizov tonight for sure. He has a chance to break the Minnesota Wild single-season point record. He's 1 point behind Marian Gaborik from back in the day. You knew that this was a foregone conclusion that he would eventually break that record. But a lot of people didn't think he would expand on his rookie success the way he has. But he got paid in the offseason. He's been delivering, and he's been elevating Matt Zuccarello to a level of production that we've never seen before in his career. Zuccarello's 10 points, over a point per game this year, and Kaprizov is already in the 80s. He's an absolute stud. I would spend up for him against the Penguins.
Okay, how about Pasta, Paul?
You know what? You're reading my notes. That guy, I got a good look at him the other night in a terrible loss for the Bruins. They were embarrassed. I think they're going to come back with a vengeance tonight against New Jersey. And Pasternak had the look of Ovechkin the other night. The way he set up on the power play on the left flank, it's very reminiscent of what we've seen Ovechkin do hundreds of times. And Pasta's right there in terms of the offensive production. 7 goals in his last 10 starts against a Jersey team that is going to give up some shots on goal. And he's poured a ton of them on that, 49 in his last 10 games played. So I like that pick. I like Alex DeBrincat against Florida. You might say against Florida, they're a powerhouse. They're a powerhouse offensively. They're leaking goals right now. And DeBrincat's been scoring a lot of them. He's been on 15 scoring plays in the last 10 games, 37 shots on goal for him, 6 goals in that stretch. So the Chicago offense will show up, and I think it's going to be a high-scoring tilt there. DeBrincat had a good investment at $7,200. And finally, Johnny Gaudreau is outscoring the world in everybody except for Mitch Marner over the last 2 months. And with 16 points in his last 10 games played, he gets LA on the second of back-to-backs, and Calgary's going to be ready for that one.
All right, real quick, where can you save some money? Who's going to be a value play tonight, Pete?
I think you can get some value on the Boston Bruins against the New Jersey Devils. I love the way Charlie McAvoy's playing, and you can get a piece of him through Hampus Lindholm, his new defense pair, who was just acquired before the deadline. He'll get you some good peripheral coverage. And yet, in our rankings on NHL.com/fantasy, McAvoy is up to number 5 among defensemen this week. So he's really skyrocketing since that acquisition of Hampus Lindholm. So I think that you're going to want to get multiple Bruins in your lineup. As good as Jersey's offense is, they're probably going to give up a bunch of goals to Boston tonight, especially after how Boston had a rare loss the other day. Swayman got lit up. That team will be motivated. I doubt they'll lose, and I'm sure that they'll probably score 3 or 4 goals at the very least against New Jersey. I think McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm will both be heavily involved.
All right, real quick, Paul, where can you save some money?
Anders Lee's been on a long-time heater, Jesse, and I think that continues tonight against Columbus. I like Anthony Duclair in a second-line role that I think I might even stack that whole second unit in a matchup against Chicago, a high-scoring affair. And then Willie Nylander's in the doghouse a bit in Toronto, and I expect him to do what he's done regularly, and that's produce points, at least 10 in his last 10 games played, 30 shots on goal. He's going to play on the power play, too. Don't worry too much about that third-line designation. The PP look is going to be where he scores his points.
AJ, value.
I'm going to look at Carter Verhaeghe for the Panthers to get a share of that. Paul mentioned they've been scoring a ton of goals. He's 4,400. good opportunity for him to build on what he did on Tuesday. He picked up an assist that broke out of a 3-game point streak. If you're willing to go with my homer pick here, Jason Zucker looks ready to jump back into the Penguins lineup in a second-line role, and he'll cost you just $2,500. So look for him to pair up with Malkin and Ricard Raquel.
Guys, great work this morning. Appreciate it. That was fun. We got a recap here of a huge night in the NBA and some plays for tonight coming up. We also got Steve and Eric. They're going to go over some player futures and some props around baseball. And speaking of that, so we have Steve now with his MLB Network buddy, Robert Flores. They were on the Unreasonable Odds podcast. And they talked a lot of stuff here, but also, you know, Steve, being a big wrestling guru, had to work in
WrestleMania.
A few questions. Some dudes in singlets going after each other.
Let's check it out.
Give me a dream match between a current WWE star and a current AEW star.
That's a very good question. That is a very good question. So I think MJF, as I said, I think he is right now. I think he's the best heel in the business right now. So I would put him against. Boy, I really have not watched much WWE programming. I just don't think it's very good right now. Give me someone in NXT or something like that. That would be.
You know, I think would be good.
Yeah.
MJF, AJ Styles.
That would be really good.
I think that would be really good.
I like that a lot. Yeah. I could see MJF against Seth Rollins too. I think that would be very interesting.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I like that. Good call.
The most underrated baseball player in the league right now.
Whew. Man, that's a good one. That's a real good one. Maybe you know what? Maybe the guy that just signed an extension with the Diamondbacks, Katel Marte.
I could not agree more. I could not agree more.
I love his game. And I commend the Diamondbacks for opening up the checkbook and giving him an extension. I know they're in the middle of, however you want to term it, reset, rebuild, reimagining, whatever. But I think that's a great move for him and for the Diamondbacks. So give me Katel Marte. I like him a lot. Very versatile, has mad pop. So yeah, give me him.
I'll throw out one more name too. Austin Riley does not get enough love for how good he is.
I love
Austin
that
Riley.
one. Yeah, absolutely. And no, that's a really good call. You know, got a lot of MVP votes last season, and there were some people that thought he should have won. So yeah, I like Austin Riley a lot. Good call.
In their peak, who was getting the bigger pop? Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock?
Ooh, man, that is tough. I feel like Stone Cold, he was that first really crossover star of the Attitude Era.
Yep.
And then The Rock kind of came right after. There is a great clip on YouTube of, I think it's Mankind against The Rock. It's when The Rock was with the corporation or something. And they're beating up Mankind, and Stone Cold, you know, that glass breaks, the music, and the place just explodes. And I don't know. I mean, we're splitting hairs here, so maybe it's Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Fun story about that. I was at that show.
Really? Was that in Boston?
It was in Worcester, Massachusetts. It was the best show I've ever been to. Yep.
Reasonable Odds with Steve and Robert Flores is on YouTube. Go check that out after the show, or download the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you like to download podcasts, and listen to it whenever, wherever. That's the beauty of a podcast.
Where was Julian? Like, did Steve kick Julian out for that one?
Honestly,
Steve really likes Robert, and he's fantastic.
Yeah, he's
but
great.
he's never that happy around us.
No, he's not. We're going to have more with Steve next segment, but first, how about we talk a little bit about last night in the NBA? A lot going on.
I would love to know what DraftKings contributor Gary and Thorne thinks.
Let's bring him in then.
Thinks about some of this. So last night, how much pleasure did you take in the Celtics losing to the Heat, failing to clinch a real playoff spot, although the Heat were able to do it?
Right. Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's start here again. Sweet. I mean, I think it was a really interesting game. I think you saw the fact that the Celtics clearly do miss Robert Williams, which, you know, no one thought they wouldn't. He's been such an impactful player on defense so far this season, but it probably said more about the Heat to me. I just thought this was a really resilient win for them. This is a team that, I mean, really had gone through the ringer the last 2 weeks between the very animated sideline argument with Jimmy Butler, people kind of mocking and knocking Heat culture the past couple weeks, the 4-game losing streak. They needed a win like this, even though they were, you know, coming into the night sitting atop the Eastern Conference. And the fact, not only was it that they beat the Celtics, but just the fact that their starting lineup performed so well. I mean, when you look at the on-off numbers for Butler, for Lowry, for Max Struss, that was the unit that really came through for them last night. And obviously, the importance of your best 5-6 players is only magnified in the playoffs. So I think for them, that was such a huge win just to kind of get back on track and really get their confidence back.
Suns already clinched the top seed.
Yeah.
Question though, Jokic, I
Yes.
mean, he's the favorite for MVP right now, right? Minus 155. He put up 37 points, 13 rebounds, 9 assists, 70.75 DK fantasy points.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, who's got it better than him right now? Nobody.
I don't like Gary. Are you concerned at all, or how concerned should people be with like voter fatigue here with this guy when it comes to MVP voting? Because that's a thing.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I do think the interesting part of this is that there could be voter fatigue for several parties. I mean, I think Giannis Antetokounmpo is also, you know, someone suffering from voter fatigue right now. I mean, under most circumstances, I think he's been kind of viewed as the far and away number 3 option in this MVP race because Joel Embiid is sort of that fresh blood. I mean, this is the first time Embiid's really had an MVP run, a legitimate MVP run. So Jokic probably isn't the only guy suffering from that, but we've kind of seen that narrative turn around a little bit the past 3-4 weeks. I mean, I know he literally yesterday started the day at plus money to win the MVP on the DK Sportsbook, and by the end of the day was, I think, minus 125 to take home the award. So it seems like between just maybe some betting market stuff and the fact that you've got guys like Tim Bontemps going out there and, you know, talking to a lot of the actual voters for this award and doing his straw polls, and the tide is really starting to turn for Jokic. And it's performances like we saw last night, which it's funny when you read off a stat line like that, and I don't even blink just because that's almost become the absolute norm for someone like Nikola Jokic. And, you know, then factoring in just the fact that he hasn't had Jamal Murray, he hasn't had Michael Porter Jr. all season long, the staggering difference between the Nuggets' success when he's on the court versus when he's off the court. I think it's a pretty clear-cut case that Jokic should be the MVP this season. I wouldn't worry too much about voter fatigue, but I don't think he's going to win a third, let's put it that way, next year. So, especially if he takes this one home this year.
Okay, well, you mentioned Giannis. He is the highest priced player on the board. Talking DFS tonight, we got a 5-game slate. He's 11-8. So is that who you are paying up for in DFS, or who's your guy tonight that you're just going to spend a boatload of cash on?
Yeah, I think there's a couple names you have to like above 10K. I think someone like Darius Garland is kind of in an interesting spot just out of, I mean, sheer desperation for the Cavaliers. I mean, this is someone who's been playing essentially 42 minutes a night their last 10 games because every single one of his teammates just is dropping like a fly due to injuries. So Garland, just from a volume perspective, I think is in a really interesting spot in an up-tempo matchup against the Hawks. Obviously, on a slate where Kevin Durant is playing, you always have to at least consider Kevin Durant, but I would say Giannis has to be your number 1 target tonight. I mean, he's $11,800. It's not going to be easy to fit in pieces around him. I understand that, but we've kind of gotten to a point with Giannis where game script is just so important with him and the Bucks in general. And when they play a good team, you're almost locked into having to play Giannis. I mean, the last 8 times he's been forced to play 35 minutes, which isn't even really that high a number considering what some of the star players in this league are averaging so far this season. But 35 minutes, the last 8 times he's done that, Giannis is averaging 71.1 DraftKings points per game. And that includes that 75 DraftKings point performance he had on Tuesday against the Philadelphia 76ers in a very similar spot to what this game should look like tonight against Brooklyn. So if you're in a situation where you think Giannis is going to have to play serious minutes and meaningful minutes in the fourth quarter, he's just going to probably score 75 DraftKings points.
All right, Gary, you can't pay up for everyone, so where are you looking for some value?
Yeah, there's a couple nice places. I mentioned the Cavaliers virtually having no members of their rotation left. I think Lamar Stevens is an interesting guy who's got multi-position eligibility. He's actually seen his price point drop from last night's slate, $200. He's down to $3,500, which I find surprising, just considering he's gone for at least 20 DraftKings points in 5 of his last 6 games. He literally scored 16 points in 26 minutes last night. Like, I think his role is pretty secure. He's not a huge ceiling guy, but I think his floor is really, really nice and really, really reliable. Malik Monk, just with no LeBron James, likely no Anthony Davis once again. I mean, Russell Westbrook's going to be the number 1 option for the Lakers tonight, but Monk was clearly the number 2 option in that game they had against the Mavericks on Tuesday. It turned out to be a blowout, so I'm not quite sure how many minutes Monk would have ended up playing, but got over 32 minutes in that contest, hoisted up 10 3-pointers. So I think his ceiling is pretty set in stone. And then probably my favorite value play on this slate is Killian Hayes of the Detroit Pistons, who's, not a lot of notoriety in his rookie season based on some injuries. Hasn't really been doing too much and kind of in the shadow now of Cade Cunningham in his sophomore season. But Hayes has been playing some of the best basketball of his career the past 2-3 weeks. He's gone over 27 DraftKings points in 6 of his last 8 games. He's gone over 30 DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4 games. And just more regularly playing like 32, 33, 35 minutes in these Pistons contests. And I think the one piece of injury news to consider, not that I think Hayes even needs injury news to be viable on this slate, but Corey Joseph is questionable with a back issue. I don't really think there's a reason that the veteran Corey Joseph is going to have to play in this game for the 20-win Pistons in late March. I think he probably sits tonight, and that just opens up even more opportunity for Hayes. He'll probably get into the starting lineup, and maybe he sees those minutes get over 35 tonight.
All right, Slater per pick. We'll get you out of here with this. Your favorite bet on the board tonight is what?
I'm going to go with the Hawks -6. They've just been playing some really good basketball, specifically at home as of late. They are 13-6 ATS. They're past 19 home games. Across their last 10 games overall, they have the 9th best net rating in all of basketball, while the Cavaliers, again, you feel for them. The fact they are just so injured. They lost Evan Mobley. He's going to be out for this game and their next game. They are 0-6 ATS in their last 6 games. They are just not playing well. They seemingly cannot score the basketball. And as I mentioned, Darius Garland's already playing 42 minutes a game. So I don't know what button you press if you're JB Bickerstaff. It's not like you can play him more. So they're just in a situation where they're kind of at a loss right now, and I think the Hawks are going to be able to take advantage.
All right, good stuff, Gary, and appreciate the time. As always, we're going to turn our attention to MLB after this quick break.
Yep. Hey, guess what is 1 week from today?
Opening day.
Yep, that is right, Jesse Cofield. We get to a tradition unlike any other, tweet out pictures of us playing Little League Baseball, and I look forward to that. And as I look forward to this season, I ask myself, and I ask the people at home, who were the top hitters in Major League Baseball last year? Well, here are the leaders on your screen. Trey Turner, oh man, for a guy who struggles with health, 195. Then you got a pair of Toronto Blue Jays there coming in second and third. Freddy Freeman now calling LA home. Don't worry, Whit Merrifield. We see you there as well with a $184.
Vlad Guerrero, that's Steve's favorite player.
It is Steve's favorite player, and I'm so glad Steve is here because I know we're some of his favorite people to talk to. Nobody puts a smile on the face of Steve Buchanan like Jesse Kofeld and Emerson Lance unless you're Robert Flores.
Yeah.
Eric Halterman of RotoWire also here. Guys, we're here to talk some hit props. So who are the favorites to lead the majors in hits in 2022?
All right, let's first look at the prop for who will be the overall leader in hits in 2022. Okay. So right now we have Tim Anderson, the favorite at plus 1,000. Now, Anderson hasn't played in 150 games since 2018, so we know he has ability, but maybe not the most likely to get the totals here, right? Also at the top, 5 guys we just saw from last year: Bichette Guerrero at plus 1,100, Turner plus 1,200, Merrifield Freeman plus 1,500. So here's my question, Steve: is it going to be someone at the top, or are you going to be looking at someone with like longer odds here?
Yeah, look, obviously, when you have someone like Tim Anderson at the top there, like, rightfully so. I mean, for the games that he played, he was averaging over a hit per game. Like, this guy is an absolute machine. The problem is keeping him on the field. That's the biggest thing for me. I like those odds for Trey Turner at 12-1. I think those are really solid odds. He led the league last year, like you guys so eloquently just showed a few minutes ago, but he did that playing 148 games. If you look at the guys that had the top 5 or in the top 5 for hits last year, games played 159, 161, 162, and 159. So Turner led the league by 4 hits, playing less games than all of those guys. Being in that Dodger lineup, there is just no outs to be had. They really can't pitch around any of these guys. And regardless of where Turner is going to be hitting, whether it's second or whether it's third, it's going to be very well protected. Pitchers are going to have no choice but to throw the ball and try to generate an out from him. So with that type of mentality and the way that Trey Turner can get the ball out to the field, I like Trey Turner at 12-1.
All right, Eric, who do you like?
Yeah, I like another guy at plus 1,200. Wander Franco is very interesting, one that top tier. He's tied for 4th in the odds, both of my favorite projection systems, ATC by Ariel Cohen and the Bad X by Derek Carty. They have him 7th in projected hits, but projections often aren't super all in on the very young guys just because they don't have as much data to work with, and projections work off of the data. So for a guy as young as Franco to be, again, 7th by each of those, that says a lot about him. He's got what you want for a guy who could lead the league in hits, and that he makes an absurd amount of contact, 12.0% strikeout rate as a rookie last year. And that could even go down this year. He's at 7.9% in the minors. So he's who I like among that top tier. Maybe Nick Castellanos, a little bit lower down at plus 2,000, going to a very hitter-friendly park with a very strong lineup in Philadelphia. Cut his strikeout rate down to 20.7%, which isn't Wander Franco territory, but it's enough better than average that I think it puts him in the mix. He hit 309 last year. So he's the guy like a little bit lower down, but I think Franco is the interesting one in that top tier.
Well, these player totals obviously depend on health for sure, and we might see guys take a couple extra days off with a somewhat condensed schedule, but you got Trey Turner's total, 176.5. That's 19 hits below last year. And then Freeman is at 166.5. This is by far the most dangerous lineup in baseball right now. Are these easy overs in the Dodgers lineup, though, Steve?
Look, I am in no interest in taking an under in anything that has to do with a Dodgers hitter that is going to be consistently in that lineup. Like I alluded to earlier, if I like Trey Turner to lead the league in hits, I'm certainly not taking the under on his total. That would just be madness. Why would I do that to myself? I won't. So I'll spare it for you. I'm not going to do that to myself. Taking the over. Freddie Freeman. You know, we thought he was well protected in the Braves lineup. How about this Dodgers lineup that he's going to be in? Now, granted, you know, he's in a much tougher division when it comes to ballparks, but we're not talking about home runs here. We just need him to get the ball in play. So I like the over on both of these here. Both of these guys should be right in that realm when the season comes to a close. And quite frankly, they should be going over those totals as well. But like this lineup is going to be a nightmare for opposing pitchers. There's just, like I said earlier, no outs to be had in this lineup. So absolutely taking the over on both of these guys.
I mean, Eric, for Turner, like no one's had more than his 273 hits over really the last couple seasons.
Yeah, and the projections see it that way too. Both ATC and the BatX have him as the hits leader, comfortably over. They also have Freddie Freeman comfortably over here. The only point against these two is the Dodgers have so much depth that they can afford to rotate guys heavily. There are only 3 Dodgers played in more than 130 games last season. Justin Turner led the team in plate appearances with 612, but he was 54th overall in the league. So they will get their rest. But that lineup is so good that I think it's not going to matter, because the other thing you need for getting a huge total of hits is a lot of plate appearances, which they will get on a per game basis, even if they're sitting often. The Dodgers last season as a team finished second in plate appearances, and that was without a DH. So now that they have a DH, I think they're going to comfortably send their guys to the plate more than anybody else. So even with maybe 3 or 4 more days off than these guys would have on other teams, they're still going to end up with very high totals of plate appearances and therefore very high totals of hits.
All right, Steve, let's talk about the Blue Jays dynamic duo. Bichette's hits prop is 178.5, Guerrero 176.5. But there's no way, right, that like pitchers give Guerrero enough pitches to get 177 hits this year, right?
I don't know.
Like, we don't usually see guys with his type of power near the top of the league leaders in hits. So how do you look at these totals, Steve?
This is such a weird question. Like,
Yeah,
I read this
I
from
didn't write
producer
it.
Drew. I read it from producer Drew, and I was
Yep.
like, what is he talking about?
Yeah,
He just did it last year. He exceeded the 177 by 11 hits last year. 3rd in the league in hits. And then if you look at the top 20 in hits, let's really expand this baby, okay? Top 20 in hits. 8 of the 20 guys had 30 or more home runs. So listen, Drew, do some research when you're doing these shows, look up the stats, and then eloquently write your questions. Because you know what? This question stinks. Because obviously it can happen. We just saw it happen last year. So you know what? I'm not even really going to answer this one. I wanted to publicly take this time to out Drew and say, do your questions better, because this question stinks.
Wow. I mean,
Eric, do you agree?
Yeah, don't answer. Don't answer. Just yell at Drew.
I'll yell at Steve. I'll actually take Drew's side here. I think the hit totals for these guys are inflated. Because, well, you're the one who's actually with the company. I'm RotoWire, so I'm not even a company.
oh my God!
Burn!
Hey, that was good. Hey, that was good. I got nothing on that. That was good.
Well, anyway, so these guys, I think their totals are a bit inflated because they spent so much time playing in small minor league parks last year. They're both going to be near the hits leaders, but the projections actually have these guys both as slight unders, and I would agree with that. Vlad in particular, he walks a bunch now. He didn't before. His walk rate was around league average his first couple years in the league. He was up to 12.3% last year, partially due to becoming more selective, partially due to hitters becoming more scared of him. And that extra 4% walk rate means there's about 25 times a year where he doesn't even get a chance to hit. That takes away just enough, I think, that I would side the under here, although the place in the batting order is going to matter for both of them. They can both, I think, either hit second or fourth. Bichette was batting cleanup late last year. He was back to second in spring, although there's just a lineup today where I believe he's hitting cleanup, and one of the Blue Jays reporters said that this is the supposed opening day lineup. It's got Vlad second and Bichette fourth. Whichever of them hits earlier in the lineup, if they're going to stay there all year, I'm closer to going over there, but I would slightly side under on both.
Producer Drew just got in your ear and said, wrap, no other topics after this. So,
Because you can't top
Oh, that's fine.
that.
His ego is crushed. I understand.
He said you
It's okay.
can't top that.
hey,
It's okay.
I want you to know that producer Drew is wearing the same exact hoodie as you today, Steve.
Yeah, he wants to be like me. I understand. Who wouldn't?
Well, that was an excellent segment, and
That really was. Good stuff, Eric.
Yeah.
Good burn today, bro.
yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Hey,
All
nice
right,
job.
we still got some Tiger Watch with Jeff. I almost called Reed Tiger, but it's Reed Tiger Fowler. But we have some racing stuff we need to talk about with Pierce Dietrich. F1 and NASCAR coming up right after this. He is passionate.
He stinks.
Dude,
If you ain't first, you're last.
I love when you do that.
Because we're talking NASCAR.
I jump on you like a spider monkey, Chip.
Dear sweet 8 pounds 6 ounce, just born, baby Jesus.
All right, Rub it is racing here. We got the
Right.
NASCAR Cup Series standings. Wow, look at Chase Elliott.
Absolutely.
He's a good dude. Joey Logano, great kid, great family.
okay.
No, I interviewed him like 13 years ago when he had like no stickers on his car.
Okay.
It says he looked like a Fisher Price car, but now he's
So
just
these are the
kicking
standings,
butt.
and the reason we have number 34 highlighted here.
Brad Keselowski. Because it's Pierce's favorite driver.
No, well, Pierce Dietrich is here to comment on the Brad Keselowski situation.
What
So
a debacle.
2 weeks ago, Brad Keselowski was penalized under NASCAR's new rules after his car was said to have modifications to the car that weren't allowed. So what it was exactly, NASCAR is not going to tell anyone. They won't say.
Super secret.
But he was penalized 100 points, leaving him in 34th in the standings, 153 points behind the leader. So with those 100 points that NASCAR took from him for something he did that we're not allowed to know what it was, he would be in 17th, just 4 points behind Kyle Larson. So Larson remains the favorite to win the championship at plus 400. Keselowski plus 6,000 now. Pierce, how confident are you Keselowski can drive his way back up the standings, get into the playoffs, keep his championship hopes alive? Is there any shot here?
No, none
Okay.
at all. He's washed up. He's been washed up for years. And the fact that he had to cheat that much should let us know that maybe he's not that fast. If they're willing to make that kind of modification that results in a major penalty. It happens to everybody. Tony Stewart, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, all these drivers toward the end of their career, they declined rapidly. And those guys declined rapidly on good teams with good cars. Brad Keselowski took a step down. He's now running for Roush. He's toast. There is no way that he's going to climb out of this hole. 17th, I mean, that's probably was his ceiling already.
Dude, there was another penalty last week, though, and this one involved Bubba Wallace, losing his crew chief, Booty Baker, and 2 pit crew members to a 4-race suspension. That's after they lost a tire. That's not good. You need 4 of them on your vehicle.
At all times.
At all times. How important is the crew members and crew chiefs to a driver's success here, Pierce?
It's important to other drivers, but Bubba is just not that good. It's not going to hurt him that much. Booty Baker is not really an elite crew chief. It's not going to be a factor. You only play Bubba Wallace if he's starting in the back or if he's cheap. Outside of the plate races, he's averaging a 26th place finish this season. So this is not really something that anyone is going to be concerned with. It's a new team that he's on. It's a small team that he's on, and really the only reason this team exists is because Bubba's bringing sponsorship along. It's very similar to the Danica Patrick situation years ago where she had the GoDaddy sponsorship, and so she had a car. Nothing against Bubba. He's a fine race car driver, but there's probably 20 drivers that are better than him, 20 drivers in better cars. He's a lot like, to compare to another sport, like the guy in college that's great. He gets to the pros, and he's just not good at the pro level. That's kind of what Bubba is.
Like a Johnny Manziel.
Oh, yeah, like a,
You know?
yeah.
There's someone like that.
Tim Tebow. if you
Tim
will.
Tebow's a great example, too. Should have been a tight end.
We said Larson is plus 400 to win the Cup championship. Are you taking him at that number or looking for better odds right now? What do we think?
No, it's nothing against Larson. It's just betting the championship is kind of tough because NASCAR's playoffs are so gimmicky. It's got a strange schedule. You have to avoid the wrecks. There can be artificial cautions, and people don't like to say this, but Kyle Larson won the championship last year. It wasn't because he was the best driver in the best car and he won 11 races. That's all great. But the reason that he won the championship is because there was a late race caution and he had the fastest pit crew. People want to believe that a driver determines their future, but the reality is that over the last decade in the NASCAR playoff system, it comes down to a caution and who has a fast pit crew. So to put money down on the best driver right now, it's just kind of silly because you know that in the end, it's just going to be a caution and a pit sequence that determines the championship. So there's just no reason to make this bet.
All right, let's switch gears here. We got a week off as F1 travels down under to Australia. Lovely accent you have there, New Jersey. Last week, we saw Max Verstappen, I think I nailed that one, take his first win of the season with Leclerc, you do not pronounce the C, finishing second. All right, they're heavy favorites, right, to win next week in Australia and also to win the F1 championship. So who is your bet to win the F1 championship right now?
The bet to win the championship is going to have to be Max.
Okay.
I mean, Max did it last season. He has the experience. Leclerc has the faster car, but the experience from last season and just the driving skill is going to lean towards the Red Bulls and the Verstappen team. It's not the greatest bet because it doesn't pay out that much. If you jump over and look at the Constructors' Championship, that's the bet that I would be eyeing. You can get Red Bull at plus 150, and they're undervalued at the moment because Red Bull didn't get a podium with both their drivers in the first 2 races, but that was because they had mechanical failures at Bahrain. And then last week, Checo Perez hit pit road right as a safety car came out. So what we should have seen is Red Bull get podiums with both their drivers in the first 2 races. The opposite happened. Ferrari got it because they've been very fortunate. So you're not going to get this kind of a deal very much longer on Red Bull to win the Constructors. It's going to go into the negative numbers soon. So I would take Red Bull to win the Constructor Championship at plus 150.
Okay.
All right, good stuff. We're going to have more tomorrow on NASCAR's race this weekend, the Toyota Owners 400.
That's right. And you know who's a Toyota owner? Right here.
I'm actually not, so I don't know why that's in the
Okay,
script.
and also doesn't, yes, dude, okay. I guess
don't
we're
own
probably
a
not supposed to
Toyota.
say what kind of car you have because this is internet television.
No, but I just don't
okay.
have one.
Reed Fowler, I believe, owns a vehicle made by Toyota, and Reed's going to join us next. I don't think Jeff owns a car. He will also be here talking golf.
Georgia, my mind.
No, Georgia, 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 Georgia.
We got
Georgia.
Masters pricing, baby.
Yes. Sorry, Valero, Texas Open. I know you're just teeing off today, but we're done
We
with
don't
you.
care.
We're looking ahead to the first round of the Masters next week. And the one tweet that I look forward to, honestly, every year is Sweet T Fowler's, tweet being like, it's a tradition unlike any other. The salaries are out for the Masters. It is the easiest favorite and retweet for me every year.
You guys love your golf.
Yeah, Ulrich. Hop in your Subaru, buddy. This segment's for Toyota owners.
He has a Kia. He already said that. But DraftKings contributor Jeff Ulrich and Reed Fowler, they are both here. Guys, before we jump into the price check, I want to know, another day passes, still no news on Tiger.
Okay.
So is that good news or bad news, Reed, that we haven't heard anything?
It's good news. It's good news, Jesse, because if he wasn't playing, we would already know, right? Because why would he go through the motions? He doesn't need to trick anybody into thinking that he's playing or not. And if you look at numbers across the board, if you can find them, I know there's some in Las Vegas right now that have numbers on if he's playing or not, and they're heavily favored that he is playing. So I think if you just take a look at the market right now, Woods.
Oh, is that us or him? No, there you go. All right,
No,
continue. You're back.
I was saying Tiger is most likely playing, but I'll hand it over to Jeff because I guess the Kia Sorentos are taking form here.
Jeff, his current odds to win are plus 4,000. He's in front of Louis at plus 4,500. Now, in 2019, when he won, he was plus 1,400.
Yeah, and I mean, he'd played competitive golf and he had won an event
At the time.
like 5 months prior, right? So not much similarities to when he won last time, obviously. Look, like Reed said, I mean, it's good. No news is probably good news at this point. I mean, I wasn't really expecting Tiger to confirm. I don't think he'll confirm until the weekend. Obviously, he's got a confirmed by like Monday or something like that. It may even be till Tuesday. I don't know, but I think no news at this point is good news. He's obviously in Augusta. He's practicing. That's the biggest thing. He's giving himself a shot. Like you said, we can look at the betting odds. I don't think many people are betting against Tiger Woods to play right now. So, keep that in mind. Like a lot of the money coming in is probably just pushing these odds up, but it's interesting to see the odds get shorter and shorter. And I'm sure they'll continue to get shorter as long as we don't get any more news.
All right, guys, let's talk Masters pricing now.
Yeah.
So the $15 million Millie Maker is back. So $15 to enter. There's one that's $100 to enter as well. There's a couple of them there. So go, get rich, win this thing. Listen to these guys. We can start breaking down like your picks and stuff like that next week, dudes, but let's really talk about the pricing here. 7 dudes who are going to cost you at least $10K. McElroy, Hovland, Morikawa, Thomas, Johnson, Rahm, and Scheffler, world number 1 at the top. Who is most deserving, Reed, of the high price tag?
I mean, look, all of them are, but I think if you take a look at current form, like Scotty being at the top is, I think, a testament to what he's doing. I think that's a little inflated of 3 wins of his last 5 events, but again, he deserves to be there. I do think, though, whenever you get Masters pricing, what you love about it is it comes out it comes out early, right? And so you get softer pricing. It's a major, so you're finding value everywhere. I'm taking this a little bit in a different form, though, guys, is that I think Rory McIlroy, while it remains to be seen on what he's doing and what he's going to do this week, at $10,000, I think that's perfectly fine. I don't think it's too high at all. If there's anyone, right, I don't think you can make an argument against anyone being too high. I guess is what I'm trying to say very poorly. Is that at Augusta, these guys above 10,000 all have reasons for being up there. So I don't think anyone shouldn't belong there. But of all of them, I think my favorite is Rory.
Yeah, victory at Augusta National remains the lone piece kind of missing from his stellar resume, Reed. Jeff, who is worth paying up for here in this department? The 7 guys with the price tag north of 10K.
Yeah, Rory and I have a lot in common in that regard. Just missing that Masters jacket to put a cherry on top of our careers. As Reed mentioned, all these guys are deserving of being over 10K this week. It's major championship pricing. Like, everyone comes down, it's condensed, it's an elite field. You're not going to see Colin Morikawa at like 9,400 because everyone would play him. I know he hasn't played that great of late, but 10,200, the guy's won two of the last 6 majors. Of course he deserves to be there. But the most deserving, in my opinion, is probably Justin Thomas. He's been super consistent all year. He's still only $10,300, so he's $700 less expensive than Scheffler. He's coming off a great performance at the Valspar. I know he didn't do much at the match play, but it's the match play. I mean, it's not that big a deal. A lot of the top players bowed out early in the first round. So Justin Thomas, to me, is well deserving of the price. Reed mentioned Rory. He's been super consistent too. Obviously, Scheffler at 11K, I don't really have a problem with that. I mean, if this was a regular field event, sure, you'd probably see him more expensive even. But I think the 3 most deserving right now are Scheffler, Thomas, and Rory. The other guys are all fine too. I don't think they're overpriced or anything, but to me, that's like the order I would go in terms of most deserving.
Okay, usually prices aren't out until the week of the tournament, but Jeff asked nicely, and the DK team set those prices for him.
I didn't ask nicely. I just demanded it, Jesse, like I do everything in life.
You just demand and you get results. I love that. Is there anyone, though, who's played this weekend at the Valero could sway you one way or the other based on how they play? So, for example, if Bryson wins this weekend, are you looking hard at him at only 9,100?
I mean, yeah, me and everyone else on Earth will be on Bryson next week if he wins this week at 9,100. That's not going to be a big surprise. And look, it's just that kind of event this week, right? We've got, there's 4 top players in Hideki, Bryson, Rory, and Jordan Spieth, and all eyes are going to be on these guys. If one of them plays if one of them even tops 20s, that's probably going to, boost their ownership for next week just by a couple percent even. But if one of them actually wins, or finishes second or something, that player is going to get a huge bump up. And Bryson is probably the most likely to get a bump because he's priced so cheap. I mean, Bryson at his full health could easily be priced well above 10K in this field, but he's 9,100 because he hasn't played much. So if he shows form, everyone's going to pile on to that. He's the player most people are going to look to. I'll throw out a bit of a sleeper name here. Siwoo Kim at 7,100. This is a really interesting value proposition. He's played pretty consistent to start the year too. No one's talking about Siwoo Kim this week, obviously, but if he plays well, I'd be super interested in him at 7,100. I think he's a tad bit underpriced. He's actually got quite a bit of experience playing at Augusta too. So There are a few players drifting like that in the field at the Valero, but most of the eyes are going to be on these top 4 players. And whoever does finish well among those top 4 that I mentioned, they're going to get a big bump next week.
Reed.
Yeah, I thought Jeff was going to talk about all 144 players.
Do you want me to, pal?
We don't have time. We don't have time.
Whoa, he's been triggered.
You gotta go and wrap.
Yeah, no kidding. Like, Siwoo Kim is at 200 right now, so I like that call. But Gary Woodland's $6,900, Jeff. You talk about the guys at the top, like Bryson DeChambeau, he's already going to be popular no matter what, right? So, and Siwoo Kim is a DFS star. Like, Gary Woodland's 2 top 5 in the last, 3 or 4 events. And if he wins this one at $6,900, you better believe he's going to be double-digit owned. But I'll leave the other 143 golfers for you to tweet out.
All right, we have to wrap. Billy Horschel plus 7,000 next week is going to be your winner of the Masters.
You know.
Yep. You want to?
Emerson, we have to wrap the show. All right, that's the show. We'll be back tomorrow morning at 11.